everyone, welcome. Welcome to Vietnam Authentically. This is the place where you, expats and tourists, can find insight into life and business in Vietnam. And today we have with us Morry Tafakory, who is an expat living in Vietnam and running a business in Vietnam. And I have with me my partner, Neville, here. And we're going to be interviewing Morry about his life and experience in Vietnam. So welcome, Morry. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I apologize.
Thank you for having me.
Housekeeping staff that they finishing up. But yeah, so Morry, you have a business in Vietnam and it's called Tafakory Therapy and Trainer. Do you want to tell
Correct.
us? Yeah, what is it?
So I'm a physiotherapist and osteopath. I specialize in healing and training people through physiotherapy, osteopathy, and the last few years I've branched out in luxury wellness. So I work for a few luxury resort brands around Vietnam, like Amanoi, Six Senses. And I travel from resort to resort in Vietnam and I provide yoga classes, breath work, and basically holistic wellness.
Okay, wonderful. So you're normally based in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, right?
Yes, for the last 7 years.
Oh, wow, 7 years, that's a long time. And where did you come from?
Relatively depends. If you compare, some of my expat clients have been here for 20, 30, 40 years.
Lifer.
Yeah.
Vietnamese lifer. Right. Okay. Why Vietnam?
Because of books of Anthony Bourdain, actually.
Oh.
Because I used to be a chef for 10 years, long time ago. And while I was in the cooking industry, I would always read, I read all 5 books of Anthony Bourdain. And in his books, he wrote really fondly about Vietnam, about life here, about how people are, not only just the food, but just, yeah, the way
Okay. Did it
people are in Vietnam. And that piqued my interest.
Does it turn out like you thought from the book?
Yeah, actually, it was quite similar in the way he described the books. Yeah. And I always had this deep desire to go to Asia growing up in Holland. I was born in Iran, an Iranian, but I was raised in Holland. I left to Holland at 3 years old as a war refugee. I grew up in Holland, studied physiotherapy there, studied osteopathy in Germany, and then got tired of Europe and looked for the new thing. And that was Vietnam for me.
So when you first got here, like, was it your intention to start the business straight away, or was that something that came later?
It was so I used to have my own physiotherapy clinic in Holland for
I
3 years after graduating. So I graduated, started my own clinic, did 3 years of physiotherapy in my hometown. And that wasn't it for me, so I wanted to look further. And I did Asia for 6 months, 1 month Vietnam, 1 month Cambodia, 1 month Japan, 1 month Thailand, to decide where I was going to live. And Vietnam won from those 6 countries.
Wow, that's cool. So when you got here, you already straight away thought that you would start the business in Vietnam. So was it
Yeah.
easy? Like, what kind of things did you
For
do
me,
to
it was
prepare?
luck of random. I got a job offer in the middle of a sauna. I was sitting in a sauna in District 7 and I met the owner of ACC, which is American Chiropractic Clinic. It's a famous chiropractic clinic in Saigon. And I met one of the CEOs of California Fitness. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you traveling here? And I said, I'm a therapist and a trainer looking for a job. And they're like, good, we need a therapist and a trainer. What are you doing tomorrow? And the next day I came to UFC gym here in Tao Dien. I taught a workshop and I got hired on the spot. And that was 7 years ago. So my first 2 years in Vietnam, I worked for California Fitness. As a staff educator, I would train all the PTs around Vietnam. And since 2018, I've been freelancing as a therapist myself at 2 clinics in Thao Dien and then around hotels and resorts in Vietnam.
So the first 2 years, I assume that you were on a work visa, right? And then after that, what did you do in terms of, the
The whole
visa?
7 years I've been on a work permit here.
Oh, how did you get a work permit when you're an independent freelancer?
I'm a medical specialist and they need medical specialists.
Oh, I see. So
As
you
a
didn't,
medical specialist, it's a lot easier to get a work permit.
I see. But I mean, I thought to get a work permit, you have to have a sponsor, like an employer. No?
So one of the clinics sponsors me, but I don't work there full time.
Oh, I understand. So you can run your business without having to file the business visa
Yeah.
for yourself. I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Was there any culture shock in terms of the business side of things?
Mm, Coming from Holland, yes, but being an immigrant child myself, no, not really. As an immigrant child in Europe, you learn to be creative, and that's what all life in Vietnam is about: is to be creative and let go of expectations and go with the flow. Because nothing here works like the way it does in the rest of the world.
Like what? Give me some
And
examples.
anything, any appointment, any contract, any type of interaction will go its own way and not in the way you're used to. In the formal way it goes into Europe.
Yeah, so let's say
Here,
with a contract, like what kind of things should you expect to not
contracts don't
happen?
exist. They're just a piece of paper. They don't mean. Can I swear? Okay, I'm not gonna swear. But
Go ahead.
contracts don't mean shit in Vietnam. It's all arbitrary.
So even though you sign a piece of paper, it's stamped, so
It's
you
just a
could,
piece of paper.
it's just a piece of paper, even when you go and notarize
Just,
it.
depends what for, like what kind of trouble you're in. But and it also depends who wants to get you into trouble and who has more money, I guess, and has better connections.
So what you're saying is that you're not able to enforce the terms of a contract sometimes.
No, staff does whatever they want. They leave whenever they want. They take whatever they want. There's not really loyalty in terms of breaching contracts or staying with a contract.
So how
It's
do you
more about
navigate
your
that?
interaction as a, sorry?
I was just going to ask, how do you navigate that when you can't enforce a contract? Then how do you navigate getting things done?
You become Zen master. You just accept things the way they are and you treat people well. If you treat people well, you get loyalty. If you treat them like a cheap commodity, which happens a lot in Vietnam. A lot of my clients, I call them plantation owners. They're the upper level management of the big companies. They don't like it that I call them plantation owners, but that's basically what they are. They come here, they work on really cheap labor for Vietnamese that work in their factories. And if you're going to pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys. And that is definitely reinforced in Vietnam.
So it's
But
about
that's one of the reasons the bigger companies are here, because it's cheap labor. But you cannot expect loyalty or quality for cheap labor.
right. So it's about people relationship, right? So if you wanted to
Yeah.
get something like if you work with someone that you trust, then you trust them. It's not that piece of paper that's going to hold them to it.
No, you don't trust them. You make sure that they can have enough reasons to stay loyal to you, because the only loyalty they have is to their family. And understandably so. For $1 an hour, you cannot expect loyalty. But if you can provide for their family and give a future where they can take care of their family, then they'll do everything for you.
That's a good insight. Yeah, that's very good insight. And
Like,
then
for
what?
example, I see all the expats of I live in the expat bubble in Saigon, which is called Tao Dien, District 2. And a lot of my clients are long-term expats, people who have been here for a while, people who have businesses here. So I hear all the problems and issues of having a business in Vietnam from all my clients. And I've noticed the most successful of my clients are the one that provide for the future of the staff. Not in the terms of monetary gains, but education, certifications. Um, and it can be smaller things because a lot of times in Vietnam, the family gets sick and they have to pay for treatments of the family. And then they quit their job because they have to get a different job to pay for the hospital bills. Or, for example, if they're from a fisherman family, the fisherman boat has broken down and they have to go back home to take care of the boat for the family or whatever. These are just examples. And then there's employers that don't give a damn, they just let the staff go. And then there's employers that actually pay for the boat or they pay for the farm or they pay for the medical bills of their family to make sure that the staff stays.
Right. So your business cost is a little bit unpredictable at times, right? Because sometimes, like you said, if you have an employee that is that you really value, but yet they have situation like their family sick, you have to be prepared to take care of not just their salary, but potentially their family well-being as well, right?
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you care about them, if you care about your business and working long term in Vietnam, yes.
Right. So let's talk about your business model. Like now that you are a freelancer, how do you, for example, you mentioned employees. Do you have employees?
No, I'm a freelancer, I'm self employed. I've been self employed for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I do projects where I am employed, I guess, but in my terms and in the industry that I am, it's really spiritual. I teach yoga. I teach breathing meditation. I heal people. I help people.
Yeah.
So it's a very rewarding industry I'm in. I just help people to heal themselves and to get better. So I'll never get late payments like other industries have. Usually in F&B, you see where suppliers do late payments or delay payments or whatever. When you help someone from their pain, they're usually not too late on payments.
That's great. Uh, I'm going to put I'm gonna put the audience on mute and the camera off for now. We'll open the
Sure.
session up for everyone to have question in a bit. And Neville, feel free to jump in if you have other question for Morry. So okay, so then you said you go as a freelancer, you go to different resort and do the training, do these programs. So do you have contract with them where, let's say, you come back as 4 times a year or whatever, or is that just one session at a time where you just go and do one specific event at a time? Like, do you have an ongoing contract?
It's not a contract, it's just freelance contracts. So, for example, Six Senses just offered me, I just came back. I was 2 weeks at Six Senses Ninh Van Bay in Nha Trang.
Yeah.
Spent 2 weeks there as an in-house therapist, give treatments for the guests, some training for the staff.
So how do
Another really
you?
famous resort is
Yeah, go ahead.
Amanoi. So I've been there 6 times. And there's different projects of a month, 90, 3 months, 2 weeks. So it really depends on what the contract is. But usually the resorts are either between 1 month or 3 months. I stay there and I'm the visiting practitioner or therapist, basically.
So then I assume that housing and your living expenses is covered, and then you get paid on top of that.
Yeah.
And how do you price your service?
My service, I just have a flat rate, which I had quite the same for the last 7 years. Like the clinic I work for, there's it's a holistic wellness center. It's called Mandala Wellness in Taoyuan, where we have different kind of therapists, psychologists, nutritionists, acupuncturists, and we all work there as a freelancer under the same umbrella. So the clinic has the license, we work under them, and we just rent a room from them and treat our clients there.
Oh,
And yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So I am one of the cheapest therapists at the clinic because I never really go up in my prices. I believe that if with my prices, if I stay relatively low compared to the other foreign therapists, I have more access to more people that cannot afford $100 per session because the average price for what I do is about 100 USD a session. With the average 1 USD salary in Vietnam, that is quite disproportionate.
Right. So
But in my
your rate,
industry,
yeah, your rate is based on an hourly, right? Or how does
yeah,
it work?
I charge per hour, and then depending on the projects, for example, where you do training, but I still calculate it back to my hourly rate.
Right, right.
And then there's packages. If you want more sessions, there's a discount. But for me, it's mostly of achieving the goals of my clients. And then the type of clients that I see are more upper level management, like I mentioned earlier, the plantation owners. And they usually have the budget to afford me.
Right. So I wonder, so in terms of how do you market yourself, right? I can see that you mentioned you're trying to make sure that your price is reasonable. Obviously, you have a brand because other people now have known you because you're traveling around. What
I do
are
zero marketing.
no, I mean word of mouth, I would say. So,
For me, it's only word of mouth. Yeah.
right. Is there anything else that you do to find clients, or they just find you?
In the beginning, in my first few years in Vietnam, I used a lot of the Facebook expat pages.
I
So I
see.
make advertisement and posting, not advertisement, but literally just posts on the Facebook expat pages, which are the dredges of society. But um,
Why is that?
they're interesting. It attracts a certain kind of people that likes to complain and bitch and then complain about life in Vietnam. I'm sure you're on the expat pages, so you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I am on those pages, but I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about. Actually, I don't.
So there's a famous statement one of my friends once made, and they said on the expat or in general in Vietnam, we do not send our best. Us foreigners, we do not send our best to come and live in Vietnam. It's a bit of a joke, but on the expat pages, there's a lot of toxic. It's keyboard warriors, right? Because people come and post things, and then there's other people that give their opinions freely on the expat pages. And it's mostly middle-aged, balding, white, old, fat men that like to complain about things, about their life in Vietnam. And it brings out, it's a free forum, and free forum allows everyone to have an opinion. And I don't believe people with room temperature IQ should have their opinion freely.
Is that Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Celsius. I'm talking about Celsius. I'm from Europe.
That is a very low IQ. That's
So,
funny. I I need to use that line one time.
so you've been here for 7 years. What are the changes
Yes.
in Vietnam, the landscape, the economy that you have observed?
Construction, of course. I mean, the city is developing at a rapid rate. Vietnamese are learning more and more English. They're getting more high skilled. They're going abroad to study and coming back and bringing that skill set, which is really impressive to see. It's really cool to see young Vietnamese that studied abroad and bring that skill set back to open restaurants and businesses and trying to make the change back home. Because back home here, they'll have way more chances than back, for example, the States, where they're just another Asian to the Americans. And here they come back home and bring that skill set and can actually become something and become a community leader, which is what they need. The kids here need community leaders, not that American dream that they try to chase of believing going to America is the solution to all their problems. But rather than going to America, getting a sales get and because the American dream for me is back here in Vietnam. I'm living the American dream in Saigon. Because the same for me in Holland, I'm just another brown guy. I'm just another immigrant, just another foreigner. And here I'm also that, but I have the ability to make a difference for the locals. I train locals, I train workshops and classes where Vietnamese take that and improve their own communities. And that's just very rewarding.
Morry, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question. And you kind of brought up something that I find interesting, because you talked about race and ethnicity, and it almost seems that in Vietnam, you find a level of respect for who you are, your Iranian background, the fact that you were educated in Europe. Do you find did you find, because I actually did spend a lot of time in Holland. Did you find that there was a level of discrimination on ethnicities, especially from the
I wouldn't call it
Middle
discrimination.
East?
I see it as a rite of passage. Growing up in Holland is just the standard question, standard still to comment to this day is, son, you speak really well Dutch for your skin color. I'm like, I'm not sure if that's a compliment, but let's go with it. And it's always the everlasting question, where are you really from? Oh, I'm from Holland. Yeah, but where are you really from? I was here. Even though I'm not born there, I speak really eloquently Dutch, mostly because my parents never allowed me to have foreign friends. I was only allowed to have white friends because my parents believed I should integrate into Dutch society properly. So my parents are in their turn also very racist in their sense. I was never allowed to have Arab friends because Arabs are dogs and thieves. I was never allowed to have black friends. I could only have white Dutch friends. And one of the effects of that is that I speak really eloquently Dutch. So well Dutch that as soon as I speak Dutch, Dutch people get confused because normally people of my skin color and my ethnicity, they speak Dutch with an Arab accent. Whereas I speak Dutch like I ride horses and have a country club membership and play cricket.
And so now that you're in Vietnam and you've been there for 7 years, do you feel that it's attractive for other folks from Middle East, Iran, India, other countries to settle in?
No, not really. India, yes, but that's one of the reasons of that is California Fitness, because they're the biggest employer of Indian nationals in Vietnam.
Wow, I didn't know
They
that.
employ Indians that the biggest employer of Indian nationals in Vietnam is California Fitness. Yogis, because they have 27 gyms nationwide, about 3,000 staff, and all of their yogis are Indians. So yeah, they're attracting a big influx of Indians that come into Vietnam. But in general, people from the Middle East, I don't see a lot here. There's like 7 Iranians, a few Syrians. There's one really cool restaurant in District 1 called Al Sham. The Syrian guy had a restaurant in Aleppo. When the bomb started falling, he immigrated to Vietnam within a year taught himself fluent Vietnamese and has a cool Syrian restaurant in District 1 now. And he does farm to table. So he bought his own farm in Dalat and he does farm to table Syrian cuisine in District 1.
Wow. You have to introduce me so that we can interview him.
Yeah, I speak Vietnamese too. So I went to his restaurant. He doesn't speak English. I don't speak Arab. So our only communal language was Vietnamese. So it was two Middle Eastern men speaking Vietnamese in an Arab restaurant in Saigon. And all the Vietnamese guests were like, what the fuck's going on? So that was quite funny.
That is funny. So with your business, you actually don't need to get any particular permit or anything, right? Or licensing.
I have a medical license.
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
How does it work? Like you get your qualifications?
The clinic that sponsors me with my Dutch medical license, I'm accredited here as a physiotherapist.
So do you have to take tests or is there classes that you had to take at the beginning?
No,
or
my European medical license is just equal to.
Okay. And is that something that you renew every year or is that just one time?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Oh, I see. Do they do anything when you renew the license that you have to do any tests or it's just the matter of applying? Pay some fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then are there any like unplanned visit where they turn up to check on you or anything you ever been?
Yeah, the Ministry of Health checks every year.
At the
So
facility?
they come to the clinic, they check everyone's license, and then we just have to prove that all the paperwork is okay.
Yeah. Is it unannounced or they let you know in advance that they're coming?
Yeah, they'll give a phone call.
I see. Okay. So you get a chance to kind of put it together and make sure you have your stuff together. Okay, cool. So what about we talk about business. What about life? Like what is life like in Vietnam as an expat? I mean, obviously you have
It's all
this
individual cases.
right. You have this
It's
advantage,
all
right?
individual cases.
Right. No, for you.
For me, with my job, I'm in the different pools of the different expats. Like I see all the teachers of the international schools. I see the higher level management of the businesses. Not that many teachers. I try to kind of stay away from the teachers. And for me, myself, I'm big in martial arts. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I'm quite active the last year in the Jiu-Jitsu community, in the martial arts community. So we have tournaments around Vietnam. We visit each other's gyms. So that's actually quite a big, one of the fast-growing community in Vietnam is the Jiu-Jitsu community. And for me, I hang around a lot of fitness guys because I do yoga, I do fitness. So I hang around a few gyms in Saigon, and I'm quite active in the fitness and wellness community.
Right. So
I don't drink alcohol, so that excludes me from a lot of different communities.
right.
So,
that's a very big thing too, right? People hanging out, drinking.
Yeah, I don't drink, so that excludes me from about 90% of what the average client or friend of mine does in their free time. I go out with people, we do yoga together, aqua yoga, either jiu-jitsu or just hanging out at each other's gym.
Yeah.
And then, for example, another good lifestyle example for me is I eat out almost every day here. That's all my privileges here allow me to have an extravagant lifestyle where you go out to restaurants, meet out with your friends for coffee every day. And again, my job is not 9 to 5. I make my own hours. I decide when I work. I work about 3 to 4 days a week, a few hours a day. And the rest of the time, I'm either doing sports, hanging out, or eating out with friends, or doing dinner parties. So I have quite a social and an outgoing lifestyle. Whereas to my average friend that I know that does their 9 to 5, they're quite limited in that sense.
Are there many expats that is onto a 9 to 5 schedule? That's not normal, is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, most of the people that I know are on their 9 to 5, either through school or through business.
Right. I do know that a lot of expats come to Vietnam and sort of one of the very common job is to teach English. So that's what you were talking about, the teachers community.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's three kinds of teachers.
The three guys? Okay, what are the three?
Actual teachers that work at a real school.
Yeah.
Language school teachers that come without a certification. They're usually on tourist visas.
Okay.
And then there's tutors, I guess. I don't know if that's a third quality, but third quality.
I'm sorry, the tourist visa people, how can they teach with a tourist visa?
Everything is possible in Vietnam.
This is what you were talking about. I see. So they try to get away with it. But they don't go. They
They
don't.
get away with it. It's been
Yeah,
That's how most of the language centers work here. They just hire backpackers to teach English.
I see.
And
Oh,
like I said, the American dream is a powerful thing. So most locals believe going to America is the golden ticket for their child. So if they speak English, they have more chance of studying abroad. So they send them to language centers with this $20 to $30 per hour per kid. And they put 30 kids in a class times $30, give some English teachers $30 an hour. And then that's quite a profitable class you're running.
wow. That is impressive. I didn't know that it's like $30 an hour per class for each student. So parents invest a lot of money into this American
Yes,
dream that you're
Vietnamese
talking
will
about.
spend their life and limbs into their children.
Right. For this American dream that you just talked about earlier, which is like what you are living now in Vietnam. And
Yeah,
but the benefit is because you're getting this being able to arbitrage basically because you're getting the pay rate of American pay rate, but living on a Vietnamese
correct.
standard. Yeah.
Yes, I'm
That's
very privileged in that sense.
that's really wonderful. So what do you see coming up in terms of the economy? Because with COVID and changes in the immigration law, I think recently we finally got the 90-day visa again for tourists and all that. Like how do you think all this is going to play into what the changes that you expect?
No, not the only thing that the 90-day visa is going to change is that she's going to have more English teachers. But I believe Vietnam is already in the steps of exchanging people like me with talented locals. There's no need anymore for foreign teachers. There's enough Vietnamese that studied in America that come back that have better skill sets than the average backpacker that teaches here. And I think the Vietnamese government is focusing on empowering those Vietnamese that did their studies abroad and coming back and investing back into the country. And I don't think the 90-day visa is going to change much. If you have a real skill set, you can get a work permit here. So the 90-day visa is only for people who are trying to circumvent the actual work permit requirements, which is a bachelor's degree, 3 years of provable work experience in your field,
I see.
and then you get a work permit.
Actually it's that thing that Neville and you both talk about, which is there's that bias, that sort of a racial discrimination a little bit, that even though a Vietnamese person like me who gone to America, live in America, have American qualification, it's still harder for somebody like me to get a job and getting paid the rate of a white person that maybe even less qualified than me, with the white
Yeah.
skin. And yeah, unfortunately, and you said that there is a trend of encouraging people like Viet Kiều, like Vietnamese that have gone overseas and then come back.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's really a big thing. I hope there will
It's
be.
slowly changing.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a big thing. It's just small. It's getting those first baby steps in achieving that.
Right. Yeah. Anything else that you want to share with us? And Neville, do you have any other question for Morry?
Oh, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to Morry. He's got such tremendous experience in life learning, living both in Europe and also in Asia. So no, it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, a little bit earlier, what I mentioned about the American dream, the U.S. consulate, that's only the consulate, not the embassy. The consulate grosses around 4 to 6 million USD a month in visa applications for the US,
Wow.
which is quite a nice little revenue for Uncle Sam. And more than 80% gets denied.
Yeah, right.
So this is $130 per visa letter. The average Vietnamese earns $300 a month. That is half of their month's salary on a letter that has an 80% chance of denial.
Right.
So the American dream is very lucrative. And it's just this bias that I noticed living here and seeing this. There's Vietnamese that went abroad. Let's say, for example, they work in nail salons, they work their ass off, they work all year like a dog in America. Then they come back for that one holiday in a year in Vietnam, and then they splurge. They spend all this money. And then all these Vietnamese here think, ah, I can go back to Vietnam. 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 I can go back to
I think we
in
got a.
Vietnam. Oh,
Glitched.
I'm sorry, it got frozen
and
for
we're
me.
back.
Say that again. You were saying
Okay, we're back
they
again.
come back and they splurge all the money, so all the family
They
think.
spend a bunch of money, and then the Vietnamese see that as, oh, they have a bunch of money grows on trees in America, and it's super easy to get money. And they don't realize that those Vietnamese that spend that year in America worked like dogs living in horrible conditions. And then, yes, that one weekend that they come to Vietnam, they splurge, but that creates a bias. And then Vietnamese believe, oh, the American dream, if I go there, this is how I can live constantly. And they don't realize that, because the family members would also not tell them that they work like dogs all year to achieve that holiday. Also, in the terms of trying to not to lose face. So that creates this bias of Vietnamese still believing that the American dream is real, in a sense.
That is so fascinating, actually.
So I do have a question for Morry. Morry, the question I have for you, I mean, you seem so talented. I mean, you obviously know your business, you know the culture, you know the sort of the ins and outs. What's stopping you from starting up your own wellness center, yogi center?
So that's the constant question I get here in Vietnam from all my clients. Why don't you open your own center, your own clinic? It's the paperwork. It's still a communist country. It's bureaucratic. Like any country, Holland is just as bureaucratic. I have the privilege to live my lifestyle now where I don't have to do any paperwork. And I'm quite comfortable with that. And one of the examples, I treat a lot of high-level management. These are all high achievers that have big businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses. And their question is always, why not more? Why not better? And I'm at a point in my life where I'm quite zen. I can afford to work 3 days of life, 3 days a week, live like a king, do my sports, do my exercise, do my yoga. It doesn't always have to be more, but that is in my terms, in my field. I don't have to drive a Porsche. I don't want to have a driver. I don't need to live in a 5-bedroom villa. I help people. It's really rewarding. I have my work-life balance quite figured out. So why do I always have to do more? Because my friends who do have a clinics and have these bigger businesses, they're always busy with paperwork. They're always busy with the next person trying to sue them, or the next minister that changes the legislation. So you have to do new kinds of paperwork. Because one of the things in Vietnam, every year there's a new minister, all of the paperwork is void. So you have to redo all the licensing. So in every re-election, when there's a new minister of healthcare, all of the licensing has to be renewed. And that just sounds like a lot of stress and hassle to me. It's not worth it for me. I function well as a therapist if I'm at peace. So my peace is worth more than earning money, I guess, in a sense.
So actually,
oh, sorry, Petra.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, he almost reminds me that he read the story of the Mexican fisherman.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Why don't you buy a bigger boat?
It doesn't always have to be more. I'm already fishing and I'm being happy. I mean, eventually, yes, I'm 34. I'm still very young. Eventually, I would like to build a wellness center, but the way personal hurdle than it is a Vietnamese hurdle. Because Vietnam allows anything if you have the heart for it. If you want to build something here and you have good intentions, Vietnam will allow it.
So what about life? Like, I know we were talking a little bit about life, and you said you mingle on this bubble of expats. Do you find that sort of a little bit restrictive? And also in terms of infrastructure, obviously life in Vietnam is different than in Europe. Are you missing something? Are there things that are more beneficial here and things that are missing that you've wished that you have?
No, I don't miss. Again, my quality of life here is very spoiled. I don't miss anything in Holland except for a few dishes, but I can cook those here myself. So the few dishes, that's not really. I guess the only thing I really miss is nature and the cleanliness of nature, like the national parks in America, and how they treat nature there is a world of difference than how they treat nature in Vietnam. But that also has to do with education, and after 30 years of warfare and being bombarded by America, you have other priorities than taking care of a few trees. So I do understand where that's coming from. But sometimes I like to ride a lot. So I take my motorbike out into the nature. I do a lot of trips around Vietnam. I've been to almost every city in Vietnam. I've been quite extensively traveling around Vietnam on motorbike trips in the countryside. There's beautiful pieces of Vietnam, but it's also really saddening to see how fast they're destroying the nature and the environment.
What about the like, you know, making friends or dating and things like that? Because you're limited among this expat community. Do you find that the community are closer together and it's easier to make friends, or is it harder? And I mean the same with dating and personal
That
life.
depends on you as a person. I've been here for 7 years. I never dated a local. Even I speak Vietnamese without ever having to date a local. So that's quite the exception. The fact that I speak Vietnamese is already the exception. I have clients who've been married for 10, 15 years, sleep next to a Vietnamese woman every single night, don't speak a word of Vietnamese. For me, that is absolutely mind-boggling. I speak 5 languages, so that's also really helpful for me. It makes it easier for me to learn the language, and I actually wanted to learn the language.
It's a difficult
Dating
language to
is,
learn.
yeah, yes, it is. But it's also a fun language to learn once you learn the wordplay and the playfulness of it. And if you learn how vulgar it actually is, it's quite fun.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to open the recording, the official recording portion. We're going to close it, but then we're going to open it up for, you know, the audience, so that we can just have an open conversation. But
Sure.
Is there any last word before we go?
No, just do good unto others. And if you want to live here and enjoy all the privileges you have, you should do something back, not only take.
Thank you so much, Morry. And this episode has been is sponsored by Viet Healthy, Smile Hotel in Nha Trang, and Cafe Culture. We're very grateful for our sponsors. And if anyone, you know, an expat who is running a business in Vietnam that would like to share the story, please come, and you know, we would love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Morry. And we're going to now.
Actually,
yeah. Go ahead.
I have a few business friends here that would be interested on your podcast.
Please. We would love
I have one
to.
friend who owns a gym here in Tao Dien called Primal Fitness. It's quite a big strength and conditioning center. And he would be interested in having a chat.
Thank you so much.